my spooky friends. Welcome to another episode of Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. And today, I have a spooky friend from what we say here in the States, and I'm old, so you'll hear this one across the pond. So here in the UK, my guest is Liam from the Spooky Shed podcast. Welcome, Liam.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
I love to have my UK people. I've had the Ghost Story guys on. I've had Strange States on. I've had a couple other people. And what I love about the UK is you guys have such rich history. Like talking to UK people, like literally your pub is older than the entire United States. Like
it's
you
crazy,
have
isn't it?
furniture older than, anything here in America. I just love the rich history, and I got to get out there and get over there and see some of that great history. So, Liam, why don't you tell my spooky friends about your podcast and what it's a little bit about, and why you decided to get into a podcast.
Yeah, so me and Billy, we host the Spooky Shed podcast. Billy's my co-host, but I always say to get hold of Billy, it would be easier to kill him and then use a Ouija board to speak to him because you've probably got a better chance of getting a hold of him that way. So he's not always here with me, but he is most of the time. Yeah, I mean, like I said, clues in the title of Spooky Shed. We do it in our shed here. It's getting spookier as we go. We're getting some more decorations in here to make it look nice and spooky, but similar to yourself, all around, we always say our little catchphrase is for conversations around all things weird, scary, and of course spooky. But we got into it all where we started podcasting originally. We had a football podcast, and then that was too much hard work to do because we had to keep up with everything. Whereas doing stuff like this, we can bulk record, so it's great.
I hear you.
Yeah, and it was when we were doing our original podcast. After we finished doing that, we had an argument for around an hour about if we believed in ghosts or not. And then we both just said, well, we should have just recorded that because that was better than any of the football shit we've been doing.
I love that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it went from there. That was how it started. Originally, we were called Let's Talk About, and then we decided to have a little rebrand at the beginning of this year.
I love that. Because I was going to ask you about the Spooky Shed, and I thought maybe it was from your childhood or something. Like maybe you had an uncle that had a spooky shed in his back of his house or flat or whatever you want to call it. And you were like, hey, I remember this when I was a little kid going in there and it scared the crap out of me, But I'm like that you're actually in a shed. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of having like myself my own little space, and I thought, what's better than a shed? I like sheds. I don't know why, but things are starting to get weird in here. Like, so this is my little Lego building room as well.
Have you had
doing that in here?
Yeah, that's nice. I love that. Have you had any paranormal occurrences when you guys been doing a podcast in the shed? Anything weird happen?
Recently, yeah. So like I say, obviously, I build my Legos in here as well. I've got a big shelf over here full of them.
Nice.
And when I'm doing that, nothing happens. But then again, when I'm doing that, I have the lights on white so I can see better. As soon as I turn these lights red, things start to happen. Like I've been sat here for hours building Lego on a night. Like I say, same time as it is now. Like I say, it's 9 p.m. for me now. And nothing happens. It's fine. Don't hear a thing. As soon as I start talking about paranormal stuff, spooky stuff, I've heard footsteps on the roof of the shed, which is weird as hell. Could very easily be a cat, but sometimes they've been very heavy to be a cat. I don't know. But and then there was one time when I was recording before I got like a lock on the inside of the shed door. It just randomly opened very, very slowly one night. That scared the hell out of me. Yeah.
I bet. That's really interesting you said that because I've had other podcasters tell me about this. And one podcaster told me, like, same thing happened to you, but he's like in an office and he kind of has a curtain that he closes. So the kids don't come in and bug him. It's kind of like, hey, dad has the curtain closed. That means he's busy. But one day he said he was sitting there, like it was like 3 a.m. He said he couldn't sleep. And he was like, I'm going to do some research on my new episode. And he said while he was sitting there, he saw like a hand, like kind of an old withered hand, grab the curtain, start to pull on it. And he was like, oh my God, and he's like, oh, okay, maybe I'm just tired or anything. And then he said something to the effect of like, you're not scaring me. You're not going to scare me. And then it went away. I'm like, wow.
Now that would have scared me.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. I totally hear you. And, like I've been doing research late at night too. And one time I went to my door. So I have an office and I closed my door. And there was a feeling that I had like there was some kind of weird thing behind the door. And I was like, there was just a voice in my head that said, don't open that door. Do not open that door. Because I have a cat too, and I have a dog and kids. So I'm like, they like to mess with me and have a little fun with dad. But that feeling, I was just like, and it's weird, right? It's like you don't know, like, what's going on. Are you summoning something? Are you strange, right?
Well, a friend of mine, I don't know if you know Tommy, he hosts the Let's Get Freaky podcast. He has a brilliant little catchphrase. So he says, when you look into the paranormal, it looks back.
Oh, yes, I love that. I love that.
And I'm starting to think he has a point.
I think he does. Yes, I think he does. So before we get into our topic, Liam, can you tell me about your first paranormal experience? Were you young? When did it happen? Like, you kind of tell my spooky friends.
It's funny. So the first one that I have a very vague memory of, so I don't really count it. So when I was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 year old, maybe up until I was about 6, according to my family, like my mum and dad, I used to sit in my bedroom for hours and just talk to people that weren't there. I have memories of doing it, but I don't have memories. I can't remember anything that was said, so it can't have been anything that was very interesting or exciting. But I have very vague memories of doing that. But like I said, that's just very bland. I mean, it's weird, but
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's a bit bland. Then the other one the other story that I always tell, experience story, however you want to word it, is from when I was. So how old was I again? It was like 13, 14. It was the first time I was left overnight on my own in the house. My mum and dad, they'd gone away somewhere, not sure where. It was always a thing in our house when we were growing up that the front door was only ever locked when everyone was going to bed. We weren't one of them houses, because I know a lot of people, they have the door locked constantly. So our key was always in the door as well. Like even when we went to bed, the key was always just left in the door. It was never locked and then the key taken out. That would have been, it just didn't happen. So it would have been really weird.
Yeah.
But I'd been out with my friends. I'd come home. I hadn't locked the door, but we always put the key in the door, so it was there ready to lock it. So then I think I'd gone and made myself a sandwich or something, played on the PlayStation, and then I decided, I'm going to go to the shop. I want some, I don't know, wanted something to eat, wanted some snacks or something. So then I go to open the door and take the key out, but the door's locked. Oh no, that was it. No, I've completely told that wrong. So the key wasn't in the door. That was it. That was why it was weird. So the key wasn't in the door. So I'd gone to open the door and the door was locked, but there was no key in it. So I'm thinking to myself, well, where is my key then? Because like I say, as a rule, I would have put the key in the door. That was what we always normally did. Yeah. So then I'm searching a house, like, where the hell is my key? And then I found it later in my bedroom.
Okay.
Which is really, really weird. So I'm freaking out now at this point. I'm thinking, like, there's someone in the house here. So I remember I was on the phone to, like, my uncles and stuff. I'm like, right, you need to come around and search the house, maybe because there's someone in here.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's the real first one that always stuck with me, because like I said, just because of how much of a, it was set in stone that, like I said, we never locked the door until everyone was going to bed. The key was always left in the door, and then the fact that the door was locked and and the key wasn't there, it was really weird, and it really did freak me out.
Yeah, definitely. And that will fit in our story today. I'm doing a little tease for the audience, kind of interesting. So you told me you and your friend had a discussion about ghosts, whether they're real or not. What makes you believe they are real?
Well, this is the funny thing. So the whole argument that we had originally was that I was very, very, very skeptical originally.
Okay. Sure.
Billy was the big believer. Like I say, he has lots of investigation equipment that we have now used. But the more we've done this, the more people I've spoke to, like yourself, and I've heard so many different people's experiences. Obviously, I've done a lot more research into things. We've done our own investigation. We've only done the one so far, but definitely got plans to do more. And now, so my personal little catchphrase is now that I believe in things, but I don't know what I believe in. if that makes any sort of sense.
No, that perfectly does. So on your investigations, have you seen, heard, smelled, whatever, something that made you go, huh, maybe this is real. Maybe there are ghosts.
Yeah, so the one we done, we went to a woodland area that is near where I live, and there's an old abandoned house in there, and we set up Billy's REM pod and his SLS camera in front of the doorway there, because it was the only place where, because I was like, well, that SLS camera is not going to work because there's too many branches and twigs and sticks everywhere. The thing's just going to go off 24/7. So we decided, right, we'll put it where the door is to the house, because, you know, it's the only place there's no branches or sticks or anything. So we set that up, we're recording, we're just walking around it. We've got the cat balls out and stuff. I'm skeptical on them things, especially outside, because a little bit of wind, they're going to go off. So then we heard the REM pod going off. So we went back over and we looked at the camera. Right in front of the doorway of this abandoned house. REM pod's going off still. And then just a stick figure on the camera screen. So that was weird. And I was just like, nope, I want to go home.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a paranormal investigation. My first one this summer. I have Liam I live in a small town, and it does have a history of ghosts. I don't know if you're familiar with the architect Frank Lloyd Wright, the famous architect. He has his mansion up on a hill, Taliesin. So he's a world famous architect. You can go Google him if you don't know who he is. He created things all over the world. He was a genius architect. However, he was tragedy just followed him everywhere. Just everywhere. You know, he lost his wife, almost lost his, he did lose his wife and kids. They were burned alive in their house by a jealous co-worker. Well, someone that worked, a landscaper, what we call it, had an affair with her, and he basically trapped her in a building with the kids and nailed all the doors, windows shut, and poured gasoline all over the building and lit it on fire. And they all died.
Shit.
Yeah, and this was a real true crime in the 1930s. You can go on Google, you can go look at it. And it's just one thing after another happened to him. But anyway, there's a cemetery near there. There's like this, and you guys probably have, I don't know, countless of these old cemeteries, like in the middle of nowhere, where it's just broken tombstones. And you know what I mean? There's like a church, and it's just like out of a horror movie, right? Anyway, I'm going to do my first investigation. I have a couple of people going to come with me because I'm like you. The first time something touches me or something, I'm out.
Well, that actually happened to me at the end of ours. Oh. So we'd left the woodland area and we were back on the side of the road, and Billy was going through some of the footage that we had. And then I was stood like in the middle of the road because it's a very quiet road, so I was like, I'll be fine stood here. And you know, like when you're in a crowd and you feel someone like brush against your back, against your shoulders, and like you know that it's someone there. Like that happened, and it was like it wasn't even just faintly; it was very strongly. It was almost as if I felt like almost slightly being nudged forward. So I was, and that was when I was like, right, nope, definitely we are going now. Get back to the car. We are gone.
I hear you. I totally hear you. And we're both pretty big guys, so it's like you think we'd be like, hey man. But I have these women who are like half my size are like, bring it on. And I'm like, okay, settle down. Okay. Like, I don't have a problem with you, ghosts. Bring it on. Like, they have cursed. One of my podcast guests has cursed dolls all over her house. And she's like, whatever. Like, really?
No, I couldn't do that.
No, neither can I. So let's get right into it, shall we, in our topic. And this is one of my favorite topics other than the Enfield poltergeist. This one is, I feel, and Liam, please correct me at any time, that it's more real than the Enfield poltergeist. This is the way I feel. And so what if I told you, Liam, there was a house in Britain that is considered the most haunted house in Britain, but it's not easy to find, and it's had a poltergeist living there, well, basically for centuries. And that is the Black Monk of Pontefract. So Pontefract is, please, I'm an American, so I have a mush mouth. So if I make any mispronunciations, just step in and be like, no, it's pronounced this way. But what I love about this story is I actually had one of my podcast guests from strange states go to this. Yes. So he actually went to this and he spent some time there. And it is a place you can go to. The gentleman who rents it out or whatever you want to say, leases it out or whatever, you can go in there as a paranormal investigator. So I'm going to throw some of his experiences in here. But let me give you, before I start, Liam, anything you want to add about this small town and like about the house? Because I guess it's a nondescript house and it's nothing out of the ordinary. It looks like a house
Yeah,
or a
but well,
flat, whatever you want to say.
that's one of the famous things about it. It's a very bog standard. It's just a council house, just in a town in Yorkshire. Like it's there's nothing special about it.
Yeah, right. So what they say is it's inconspicuous on the oh boy, I'm trying to pronounce this one. It's in Pontefract. It's the Checkerfields Council Estate. Okay, in West Yorkshire. It's an ordinary looking semi-detached home, but it's home to this violent poltergeist, and I had to laugh about this. Named Fred. That's by the Pritchard family, who claimed it terrorized them in the 60s. So when I told you Black Monk of Pontefract, supposedly, we'll get into it a little bit, people saw a monk and it kind of like a shadow monk, but they wound up calling the ghost Fred or this poltergeist Fred. Well, it's kind of interesting. So let me kind of go through it and kind of explain here. And like I said, Liam, just throw whatever you want to throw in here anytime you want to. So the poltergeist phenomenon reportedly began in August of 1966 when the Pritchard family, parents Jean and Joe, and daughter Diane and son Philip, lived in the house. It lasted for a few days, then stopped for nearly 2 years before starting again in 1968 and continuing until late 1969. Now, when someone suggested putting a vampire repelling garlic on each doorway, why, I don't know, somebody suggested this, the phenomenon ceased and apparently it stopped. For the rest of the time, the Pritchards were residents in the property. So I don't know if you're and my spooky friends are understanding this, but people thought it was maybe like a vampire, and let's put some garlic everywhere, and it stopped it. Does that make sense to you, Liam? I don't. I don't
Not
know.
really, but it is. Like we're talking about Yorkshire here in the '60s, so I mean that was just probably everyday occurrence, whether you had a poltergeist or not.
Yeah, it is the 60s, people. So Jean Pritchard nicknamed the poltergeist Fred. Okay. I don't know why that she just did. The press dubbed him, for whatever reason, Mr. Nobody. Okay. And the history now remembers him as the Black Monk of Pontefract, after a black robed monk was reportedly seen in the house. So what's really interesting to me about this, Liam, is it almost seems like they were kind of like having a sense of humor about it. Does that, you know what I mean? It doesn't
Yeah.
seem like, I mean, they were scared. There's a number of things that happened, but it never seemed like the Enfield poltergeist, which I covered a few episodes ago, actually last year, where it seems it was malevolent. You know what I mean? It's like it was hurting people. It was scaring people. But there are some scary things associated with this house, right? I mean, it's not like it's just going around. You know, it's a poltergeist. So just before we get into some of the experiences here, have you ever thought of going there and looking at it, or friends?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely on my list of things to do. And to be honest, if Billy doesn't sort himself out soon, I'm just going to go on my own. Well, I say that I'm probably too scared to go on my own. But I do want to go there because it's only about an hour and a half away from us, so it's fairly close.
Yeah, awesome.
To where I am.
Awesome. Yeah. So on
I do want to go there.
Yeah. So on the podcast last year, I had Chris from Strange States, and he actually went there with a friend of his to do an investigation. And when he was there, he went into Fred's room. And in Fred's room, what will happen is if you sit on the bed, a little ball will just magically come out from the bed, just roll up from out of the bed. And you basically pick up the ball and you say, "Hey, Fred, are you whatever?" He was communicating with Fred, and he would roll the ball back under the bed, and then he would come back out. And then he was like, "Okay, wait a minute," like you, skeptical. He said, "Well, this is an old house. It's probably not level. So, who knows what's going on. So he went down to talk to one of the managers was there, or somebody, looking after the house. And he said, hey, up in the room here, I think you better do something about it because your floor is not level. And the guy looked at him and goes, you met Fred. And he's like, Fred, yeah, okay. Yeah, Fred likes to roll the ball and likes to play. And he's like, okay, all right, fine. And then he told to his friend, wow, this is really happening. This happened. And she was a little scared. She was like, I'm not really sure if I want to do that. So he said, I'm going back up. So he went back up and he closed the door and he started doing that again. And then also he was turning on and off the lights, and Fred didn't like that. So Fred would turn the light on, he would turn it off, Chris would turn it off, Fred would turn it on, Chris would turn it off. And then also he felt like Fred was getting on the bed with him, like he'd feel the bed depressed. And he's like, okay, this is getting weird. And then also he did some EVPs and some other communication and heard some voices, he believed. And, he just said the whole house is just heavy, especially when he said he walked in. It just felt heavy. It felt dark. She said it was just like someone putting a weight on your shoulders. And his friend downstairs, she was like, wow, you're moving around a lot up there. And he's like, no, I just been sitting on the bed. And she goes, well, I've heard running around, like someone's running around up there. And I just want to, are you okay? What's going on? He's like, I'm not doing that. So it was like a little kid, like your kids when they're little and they're running around, above you, if you have like a basement or whatever, and you're like, hey kids, stop running around. You drive me crazy, settle down. And she could hear that. She could hear it running around. The guy who was there, who's the caretaker of the house, is like, yep, I hear that all the time when I'm alone here. And Chris is like, wait a minute, you're alone here? And he's like, well, I caretake the house. So sometimes I come in here and, wait for people to do investigations. And I just sit here by myself. And I'm like, wow. And Chris is like,
I'd wait in the garden.
Yeah, right? You know what I mean? And he says he hears people footsteps coming downstairs, hears bouncing balls upstairs, hears voices, things will move. He said he saw in the kitchen a plate hover and then go over to the table. He's seen other things hover. He's been grabbed, he's been pushed, and I was like, okay, whatever they're paying you is not enough, right? And
definitely.
Yeah, and Chris just said the weirdest thing about it is it's a council house, so similar to what we call here like a row house, all these houses together, or we call duplexes here in the States. And there's nothing. He was showing me pictures later, and I'm like, that is so strange, So, do you? Before I get into, I have some other. I put this account together from this one guy who did an investigation there. What he found, this young gentleman, but. Do you have any theories, Liam, of why this house and why this one would be, I don't know, possessed by a ghost or whatever you want to say?
I don't know. It's funny, isn't it? Because you mentioned there the Enfield poltergeist, which I am extremely skeptical of. I don't know about yourself, but I really, really struggle with that one. But I don't know. I mean, because it's that old adage, isn't it, of there's certain horror films, it's like, oh, it's not the house that's haunted, it's you. Whereas obviously this looks like it actually is just the house that's haunted. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how old the house is. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe first owner or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's a strange one, especially when it's like a monk. That's what really throws it off. If it was like a bin man or something, then it'd make a lot more sense. But like a monk, it's just that's the bizarrest thing for me.
Yeah, right. And that's just. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense because not to get into the Enfield poltergeist, but remember, the Enfield poltergeist, there were things in there. Well, the Conjuring 2, Conjuring 2 or was it Conjuring 3 that did the Enfield one?
Yeah, it was number 2.
Here's 2. Okay. Here's the thing. I'm not a big Ed and Lorraine Warren. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
If you do some more research into them, which I would do an episode on, and not to besmirch their legacy, because they did some good things, but for the most part, they faked a lot of it, and a lot of it was bullshit. Okay, so in that movie, in The Conjuring 2, Ed and Lorraine Warren there are for a long time. That is not true. In the Enfield poltergeist, Ed and Lorraine Warren were there for about 20 minutes. They came in the house, they did some investigation, they were like, I don't know, I think it might be, and they left. So in the movie, it sounds like oh my God, they're running around trying to help this little girl. No, that's not true at all. And in the real Enfield poltergeist, where the famous picture of the little girl hovering in the air, she's jumping off the bed, folks. You can tell. I've seen my kids jump off the bed a million times. Yeah, right? Yeah, she's clearly jumping off the bed like a little kid does. Come on. Let's stop. But yes, there are some things, some writing on the walls, some other things I've seen. I believe it's called the stick man, or this old man that kind of was creepy around. Okay, maybe I'll go with that on you. But in here, there's actual physical evidence that people have seen, including Chris from Strange State, who told me, with my own eyes, why would I be making this up? There's nothing in it for him other than I had a really good experience. So I just think that's really interesting. Again, I don't know why they call him Mr. Nobody. I don't know.
No, that's a weird one.
I had a really interesting find here about someone who actually went to the house and tried to get evidence of Fred's presence. So this person, I'm just going to read what this person did. So the person, he went to there, he was an investigator, and he tried to gather evidence. And, he said, he brought a bunch of equipment with him and everything like that. And one of the things he was doing when he started there, he said that really the scariest thing about this is that it looks like a normal house and like it could happen to anyone. And he said, like, and I quote, there's nothing unusual about the house. It's in a small town. It's nothing has happened to the other council houses. There hasn't been, nothing. And so that's where he said I was really confused about it. So he brought with him a woman. Her name was Lisa Rowding, and she has over 17 years experience. She has done over 9,000 paranormal investigations, 800 of them at 30 East Drive, the council house. And she refers it to as her second home. That's crazy.
She might as well live there.
Yeah, she said, and I quote, I consider Fred as my spiritual husband. Okay?
That's weird.
80 times? Lady. Like, okay. So one of the things that, and in here, there's not a lot of reporting with this, but one of the things they said that happened to Diane, the daughter, who was there, she had been dragged upstairs by her hair and left visible finger marks on her neck. So that was one of the things. And this is told in a book, which I want to get. It's in Colin is the author in his 1981 book, Poltergeist. I thought that was really interesting, to be dragged on top of the stairs by the daughter being dragged up there by her hair and them seeing marks. Again, like in the Enfield poltergeist, there was where if you remember, supposedly the little girl would be writing stuff like really nasty stuff on the walls, like, to threaten people, really malicious stuff. So again, kind of a difference there, but this is really interesting. So the family, they did the garlic thing, and I guess it worked. But what the family said was when the family tried to banish Fred, they tried singing the hymn "Onward, Christian Soldiers," and supposedly Fred conducted them using floating air in a floating pair of jeans gloves. So imagine you sitting there trying to get rid of this ghost, and then these floating pairs of your wife's gloves just start conducting. Da, da, da. What do you think, Liam? Yeah, I'm out.
That's probably the point when I would give up. Not that, like I say, I mean, being dragged up the stairs by your hair. I mean, I'd be fine with that because I haven't got much left. But that would do it for me. But if I really needed another nail in the coffin, it would be the ghost literally taking the piss out of you whilst you're trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things, too, this gentleman who did this investigation, like I said, this is some of his research from talking to different people, talking to the family, talking to other investigators. One of the things he says, Lisa, who has been there 80 times. One of the things she says that Fred is still as active as he ever was. Okay. She tells the story of that one day she went with her and, I don't know, 12 ghost investigators in the house. That's a lot. Okay. And they all ran out except for her, which is weird, in terror one night. Like they were working on something and then they heard, one of them heard over their headphones, actually all of them, pardon me, they heard a man's voice say, "Get out." And they all just went, like I would, right? And also she says that one of the guests was left with cigarette burns on his arm. He was smoking in this one room where I guess where Fred is. And I guess Fred didn't like it. And he claims that Fred took his cigarette and put it out on his arm. Like,
I've heard that one before.
yeah, that's okay. The other one that I never heard before was a man blasphemed. So he probably said like Jesus Christ or something and had his leg broke in 2 places by Fred. So, okay, Fred, I don't think you're a little boy. I think this is something going on, right? Because if you think about it, if there's a monk, right? Why is this monk angry? Who knows, right? But like if you ever had a nun, if you ever went to Catholic school, which gladly I didn't, but I had friends and they got, not today they do this, but back in my day, they would hit my kid with a ruler. Or hit my friend, with a ruler. Like he remembers that getting wrapped on the, for like saying Jesus or just God dang it or something like that. So that's why I'm thinking that this is some type of religious entity. Do you agree with that? I mean, it's just interesting.
Possibly. I mean, given the fact that, like you said, that we're told that he was a monk, then yes. But I don't know because it seems too evil.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If that, I know it's not as dramatic as some stories you hear about evil poltergeists and spirits and stuff, but there's still plenty that's happened. I mean, like I say, like to me, your everyday monk. There's a phrase I never thought I'd say. Would drag a girl by the hair up the stairs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like dead or alive.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And again, there's no way to prove this. There are no pictures of this. There is no. I mean, there are pictures out there if you go on Google and stuff is showing shadows at this house, and some other investigators have some EVPs. Okay, believe what you want to believe. But when he was investigating to this gentleman, this paranormal investigator, he said that one of his co-investigators said they had a slight pain in their ankle during the evening during an experiment in one of the rooms. And so he asked them, what's going on? And the person just was like, my ankle really hurts. Like it feels like I broke it or something. And then they continued on to the night, this investigator whose ankle was hurt and everything. And then the next day, he calls them and he says, "Hey, you all right? What's going on?" And this investigator had to go to the hospital and get a cast on his ankle. It had been broken.
Shit.
Right? Now think about that for a second. To break a leg in 2 places and to break an ankle, right? That's powerful stuff. I mean, that takes a lot of energy from a ghost. And, people, most of the time, my paranormal investigators who I brought on the show have been pushed, shoved, hair pulled, stuff like that. Think of the power, Liam, to break someone's ankle. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I've never heard of anything like you say, to that extent. I've heard stories of, like you said, again, hair being pulled, even people being pulled around rooms and stuff, but never to the point of broken bones. That's definitely the worst one I've heard regarding that.
Yeah.
It's just
and
weird.
This is again, believe what you want to believe, right? But also, while he was there, another investigator again claims that she was near the stairs investigating some things, and like there was a shove, like someone tried to shove her down the stairs. Luckily, she caught her balance, but she said it kind of felt like a kid, like a little, because she felt lower on her back. She's saying like if it was a man, a grown man, they probably would have pushed me a little higher up. But she kind of felt like it was a kid. So I'm like, Okay. But one of the things also he found when he was in there, when he was doing his investigation, he put some crystals around. If you know anything about crystals, I don't believe in crystals, but if you do, that's fine. Nothing wrong with it. Certain crystals have certain powers to absorb negative energy, to protection, so on and so forth. And he put crystals around there and everything. And all of a sudden, he heard what he says, a little boy say, "Stop." So, he was like asking everybody, like, "Hey, did you say that?" And they're like, "No, I didn't say that." So I think to me, and I know this is a little early to say this, but wouldn't you think this is some type of demon? And I don't want to use that word, but this is kind of getting to me like there's some type of evil here going on with the number of things that is happening. But what do you think?
I have to say I agree with you. I'm sorry, I've just been thrown off. I'm just this is what I mean about things happening in here.
Yeah.
So where I'm sat here, so when Billy's here, he's sat opposite me, so there's a chair sat in front of me. It's just moved ever so slightly.
Oh,
Like minuscule amount, but just enough for me to see it above my laptop here, and so that was why I was a bit like this then, looking over the top, because that was weird.
man, I wish I could have got that on video. Maybe I did. That'd be so cool. Speaking of that, I interviewed a man who lives in this what they call the Omen House, and it's in California. It is where, I don't know if you know anything about the Manson family, how they killed this one actress and stuff. Well, he built a house right near where Sharon Tate was killed. It's right near the area and everything. And when he was building this house, people were telling him, like, he said someone, like a medium or something, came to him, like this strange woman, and just said, "You shouldn't build here. This is an evil place. You should not build your house here." And he's like, "Whatever, lady." And it's a gorgeous house, by the way, in the LA hills. And anyway, when I interview him, he has ghost hunters all the time. He has had these spirits. When I was interviewing him, I saw shadows going across the screen. And he goes, "Did you see that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, look like a shadow." He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, he's lived in this house so long, he's just used to it. Not me, man. I just said, "How can you do this?" And he goes, I just tell him. And during our podcast episode, he's like, "Hey guys, knock it off. I'm trying to do an episode here." There were things happening around him. And he's like, "Oh man, it's kind of annoying." I'm like, what?
I just hope something doesn't start smashing my Lego up, because then I will be pissed.
If that happens, we're in big trouble. But anyway, the other thing, and this what Chris brought up too, there is a music box in the room. Now,
Yes.
say what you say about music boxes, but let me tell you this, Liam. If a music box would just start playing like 3 a.m. in me and my wife's bedroom, that music box is gone.
Yep.
I am not messing with that. And that music box will be triggered by people coming in the room. And Chris said when he went in the room the second time, well, he would do that, Chris. Come on, buddy. When he went in the room the second time, the music box, he was like looking at the music box. He was kind of like, "Oh." And it started playing on its own. And he said, I didn't touch it at all. Didn't do it. And then that's when he got a little bit like, okay. And, it's one of those music boxes that make that really weird dun 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 dun, kind of sound, and you're like, boy, now. So that has happened too. The music box has just gone off. And one of the things that this investigator had that said that I don't think I would say this. He just said, and I quote, "Fred, did you make that go off? And could you make that go off again, please?" And it did. So it went off again without them touching it. And then he asked, "Fred, are you happy that we're here?" And he said, as if on command, the EF meter, which measures spikes in electromagnetic fields commonly associated with the presence of spirits, started lighting up. Like it went boop, like right to the red. So he was like, okay. And then when they stood near the music box with the EMF reader, it just was going nuts. It was just staying on red. It just would not go off red. It just strong signal on red. And they were just like, okay, something going on here. The other thing is you were talking about with cat balls and everything, which I always think is funny when I talk to my investigators because we have that for our cats. And basically they're little balls that light up, and my cat plays with them, and she has a great old time. Well, when they were putting some cat balls on there and they were talking, they just saw the cat balls just started going off, just one after another, because they had them throughout the room, and they just started going off like crazy, one after another. So, Liam, what is typically with cat balls? Do you think ghosts, why do you think they want to try to touch them or, interact with them? Do you think there's a reason for that?
I don't know. I think maybe because they are very, or they can be anyway. They can definitely be very sensitive, and sometimes, like as far as I'm aware, and from from all the people I've spoke to, I think we've all agreed on that. Like ghosts, spirits, whatever you want to call them, are an energy. So then obviously they need to use the energy for when they want to do anything. So, like I say, cat balls being so as sensitive as they are, it's one of the best things it might be one of the best things to use because they're not going to have to use as much energy to make them move and make them go off, if you know what I mean. Like saying, oh, make that cat ball go off, where if you just like blow on it too hard, it's going to go off. Or slam that door. Like slamming the door is going to take a lot more energy than moving a little plastic ball with some lights in it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things too, it's funny that you mentioned that. So they're in the room and they were trying to get what Chris happened to him, having the ball come from out the bed, and it wasn't happening. And they kept on asking, it wasn't happening. So finally, the paranormal investigator said, "I tell you what, we'll stop filming. Let's relax. And is that okay?" The friend. Well, when he said that, the door that was closed opens up, starts to creak open. And after he said that, then he kind of felt like there was something in the room. And he can't describe it. He said it was like something in this room now that he didn't seem evil or anything like that, but it just seemed innocent almost. And then he said the ball came out from behind underneath the bed. And his cameras were off. Okay, believe what you want to believe. So they didn't record it. But they had a little fun with that. Now, one of the things too, this is got to be very careful, folks, and I'm glad they didn't do it. They were going to do a Ouija board, but then people were like, no, it's getting late. Let's not do a Ouija board. That's a mistake. I always tell people, do not mess with a Ouija board. Even if you think it's a joke, unless you have a professional person around that has dealt with this, because I have had guests on who have Ouija boards, what they call a demon board, and they have it all over their houses. They're all cursed. And she says she brings it out occasionally. We'll play with them.
Fuck that.
Okay. I don't know what you think about that, Liam.
Nope.
No. Yeah, I agree. So one of the things you can do as an investigator, you can knock on the walls. And Liam, I don't know if you've ever done this, but typically ghosts will do the Trinity. So Jesus, God, Holy Spirit. So when you knock on 3 times, you'll get that. Hopefully, knock on 3 times. Back. Okay? Now, this is typically by most experts saying this is a way of the evil spirit or ghost mocking the Trinity. I don't know about that. I think it's very interesting. Like, how would they know that? I just think, to me, it's like if you knock on someone's door, knock, 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 and someone usually will maybe knock back for just, whatever reason. We're kind of like, I don't know, programmed that way. I think ghosts are kind of programmed that way too. So, I mean, have you ever tried that? Have you ever just knocked on, been in an investigation or been somewhere and just knocked on 3 times, see what happens, see if you got any response?
No, I can't say I have, but I mean, it's a very easy thing to do, so I might have to try it and just see what happens. But then again, if anything does happen, I'll be out the door, so.
Yeah. So they're wrapping up this investigation. There were a couple other things, not too big, but then 3 a.m., as we know, is the witching hour, comes around before we know it. And they did a couple more things. Nothing really happened, but they got some interesting information. But this gentleman says, yes, this is haunted. I saw some things. I heard some things. I felt some things. This is definitely haunted. And the whole conclusion of this was nobody really knows who the Black Monk is. There's been research. I'm going to do a little more research on it because I think this is a fascinating story. There must be a reason. There must have been an abbey there, maybe a church, maybe, I don't know, something. It's strange that you would summon that specific Black Monk, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Liam? Like, why
would
that?
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And just know with poltergeists, they are technically some of the worst ghosts. And Liam, hopefully your chair hasn't moved again, or your Legos would not be busted after we get off the podcast. But just know something I've told other people about this. This is really weird. This is one of my paranormal experiences where I felt there was some type of presence in my house. Again, I live in a regular house. Not a big deal. My daughter, she's a teenager at the time. She was going through some things. She was being bullied. She was being mocked. You know, it's just, she was having a terrible time in high school. Well, one day I was sitting downstairs and, you know, I don't know why I didn't run. I should have. I was just sitting downstairs, Liam, just in my little, what I call man cave, what we call in America. Get away from the kids. I can watch football. I can watch my sports and, you know, kind of deal with that. And there was a voice that said right next to me, a woman's voice that said, John, just said right next to me. And I was like, okay, that's really weird. Then also when I was downstairs, I felt like like I was being followed, like somebody's watching me. And then the one that would really scared me, and I had to call one of my medium friends about this, and one of my paranormal friends who just kind of dealt with this. I was sleeping on my couch and my back was away from the door, and I felt like a woman's fingernails like scratching my back. And like my wife, I thought it was my wife, right? And so I turn around, Liam, there's nobody there. And so immediately I called them and they were like, what's going on with your daughter? Both of them were like, what's going on with your daughter? And I told them, they go, okay, well, we got to cleanse your house because there's something attached to your daughter because she's letting a presence into her. And that's typically what happens. So like in the Enfield poltergeist, what they said, the poltergeists attach themselves to the young girl. And that's typically what happens. A poltergeist, ghosts, evil spirits like to attach themselves to a person, and especially a person going through all these things, like my daughter was. She was going through a lot, and she was letting the presence in. That's the whole thing, letting that presence in. And that's how people, unfortunately, believe it or not, go through an exorcism, because they believe there's some type of evil presence that is associated. Most of it is just some type of physical, like my daughter, I felt it was some type of, you know, needed therapy and just needed to get through this. It's, you know, it needed love and support and understanding to get through this. But, you know, who knows, right? That's interesting to me. And this is what it kind of seems like in this case. So I don't know. What do you think of the case? Hopefully you're going to get out there and take a look at it, and then you can report back to me, because I'd love to hear.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said before, it's definitely somewhere that I want to go to. But when you were just telling me that story there, honestly, I got goosebumps everywhere. That was weird.
Yeah, I know. And I hope this never happens to you, Liam, because it was weird. It's gone now. I mean, my daughter is doing great. She's a beautiful young lady. She's doing fine now. But at that time, and my son went through some things too. That's what I said to this paranormal researcher and this medium. I said, well, my son went through this. You know, he was bullied and everything at school. Why? And she goes, maybe there's something with him. Maybe he's stronger. I don't know. But it's strange. So, Liam, I can't thank you enough. This has been awesome. This has been a ton of fun. Like I said, I hope your Legos are okay. And that chair doesn't move anymore. But could you tell my spooky friends what do you got going? What's up for the Spooky Shed podcast?
Yeah, can I ask you one question first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So before the chair moved, you sort of asked me about it being demonic. So what do you think? Do you think it's an actual ghost, or do you think it is something demonic and evil?
So thank you. I was going to bring that up. Thank you so much. I think being that I want to say there's some type of spirit there. I don't know if it's demonic, because if you think, there's been a number of investigators in there. I don't know. Maybe they're keeping it secret. Maybe not. I don't know. But I think there's an evil spirit. I think it's more, if it's a monk, well, this is what I think. It's like, this is mine. This belongs to me. So anyone here that does any transgressions, you know, swearing, or you're weak or something, because you got to remember, monks, everybody thinks that monks are like, they were these really nice people. And no, some monks were badasses. And they didn't like some things going around, and they would get physical. It's not what you think of a guy's just sitting there with robes and just kind of walking down the street and just not bothering anybody. I think this is a monk that got kicked out of something, that did something wrong. So, long story short, there's something in there. I don't think it's demonic. I think it's more like, this is mine. This belongs to me. I don't want you in here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm not sure about it being demonic, because I think personally, I mean, I've got no rhyme or reason for this, but I just think if it was demonic, it wouldn't have stayed around for so long.
Yeah.
So I do think it is, like you said, basically what you've said there. It's whatever type of spirit, but I definitely think that it is an evil spirit. But it does seem to claim some sort of possession over that house.
Absolutely. And now with the Enfield poltergeist, if you want to look that up, people live in that house and nothing has happened. Zip, zero, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing an episode on it, it's kind of like, oh, it's kind of, all right. It's like the Amityville horror here in the States. That was just bullshit. It's just, and that's sad, because you want to believe, and you want to believe that there's something more out there, and nothing hopefully too scary, but enough that keeps your interest in everything. And in the UK, man, you guys got scratching the surface of all these different things. I bet right down the road you probably have a pub that's haunted, right?
Yep. Every pub here has a ghost. I think it's a rule. You have, if you have a pub and like your ghost disappears, you have to close the pub, I think.
I love it. So, like I said, what's coming up for Spooky Shed?
Well, lots of guest episodes, because Billy is dealing with whatever he has to deal with. So I've been just plowing on doing lots of guest episodes. Which, as much as I love doing the guest episodes with Billy, I love doing the normal episodes with Billy. I love doing the guest episodes without him, because I just get to talk to people like yourself and just have really good conversations. So yeah. Well, yeah, just new episodes every Sunday.
Love it. I love it. So when this episode comes out, like I said, we'll have all your links and everything. If you are looking for a guest, I would definitely come on. And one of the things I just mentioned, the Amityville Horror House, I actually tried to buy that house. Almost bought it. Almost bought it, but unfortunately, the real estate agent told me, and I've told this story a million times on my podcast, it's not haunted. It was all BS. So I know I have a lot of people telling me I should have bought it, should have rented it out for guests, and I'm like, I don't want to lie to people. You know what I mean? I don't want to give me like a bunch of money, and then I'm like, oh, it's nothing, and you just wasted your time. Like, I'm not that kind of guy. So. But anyway, yeah, so if you ever want me on as guest, I'll definitely come on.
Definitely.
Just reach out to me. We talk about whatever. I love the UK. I love history. So anything, you want to do, I am ready for it. Thanks, Liam. I really appreciate you taking the time and go over time with me. I know the time difference, so I really appreciate that.
No problem. I've really enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks, Liam. Have a good one.
Cheers. Bye-bye.